My name is Elenoa McCabe. I go by Noah a lot across the social platforms, just because Elenoa, I guess, is kind of a complicated name for people. It's a little different. It's Polynesian. So mostly I go by Noah, but Elenoa or Noah, totally fine. I just earned my IFBB Bikini Pro card last December, and I'd been competing for about 5 years before earning that card. So it was it was a long time coming. It was a long journey, but it was great. Other than that, I'm an online contest prep and just like general lifestyle fitness coach. I work, I also work like a corporate job, a 9 to 5. So I'm a data steward for a big company out in Colorado. And so I balance those two jobs as well as my podcast, which I just launched here in Austin, Texas with my other coaches, my coaching friends. So we have our own podcast. I'm a podcast host. I'm a dog mom. I'm I'm very into the bodybuilding lifestyle, fitness, health, everything that has to do with that. And I'm in it and I'm interested in it.
It sounds like you're just interested in really like experiences and trying new things out and seeing, what you can do to take control of your situation. And I'm kind of a little bit can relate to your experiences. I have a different job as well. I do the podcast. I don't bodybuild, but I really enjoy it. And I would say I'm
Mhm.
more of on like the lifestyle side of it. But it's been a passion of mine. Fitness has been a passion of mine for a while now. And I kind of get that within this community, within the fitness and especially the bodybuilding community, where it's like people are the bodybuilding side, especially, it's so much of a commitment, but then people are willing to like add on to that with different endeavors and with more
Yeah.
businesses and with, there's just so much like possibility out there. And I think the bodybuilding community really understands that and goes after it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said there. I definitely think that bodybuilding is it's a smaller sport, but everyone within it kind of understands that like you don't have to be a bodybuilder to be into fitness. So like you said, you enjoy the lifestyle, you live the lifestyle, you love fitness, you love health, and you don't just have to bodybuild and compete and get on a stage to love it. So I definitely I'm very passionate about bodybuilding, but I'd say like overall, I'm more so passionate about taking what I've experienced and using the avenues that I have available to me to spread like my knowledge, education, help others, because really I love to see other people get into fitness and then fall in love with it too. I think that's so cool.
So how did you actually initially get into the sport of bodybuilding?
Yeah. So it was actually in college. I actually had a friend go through it. She did a prep. We were juniors, I think, in college. So I'd been into the gym, but there was no competitive drive there. It was just lifting weights, learning how to lift the weights, seeing the progress, and then kind of getting excited about that. And then seeing my friend go through a prep and step on stage. I went to her show to support her. And I thought to myself, like, oh, I think I could do that. Like, I just watched her do the prep. And there were moments where I had to step in and support, like I was her cardio buddy, or I would help her with posing or whatever. And I thought, you know what? I want to try it. I want to do that. I want to challenge myself and experience it for myself. And then when I stepped on stage for the first time, it was like coming home. Like I'm a very quiet, introverted person, but stepping onto that stage, I just felt right at home. Like all my nerves went away. I could feel my face. I was just smiling the whole time. My face hurt because I was smiling so hard. It was just such a fun experience, and I've never like had anything else like that in my life previous of that, just feeling very comfortable and at peace.
Yeah. It's funny because I hear that so much from bodybuilders where they're like, I'm actually pretty introverted. I'm kind of like doing my own thing. And the more I hear it, it just kind of makes sense because the lifestyle of a bodybuilder is almost like it's almost like I don't want to say a lonely one, but you definitely
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard for people, for a lot of people, most of the people in your life probably to relate to what you're doing, to understand what you're doing. So you have to like almost be okay with being misunderstood in a way, with being
Hmm.
alone in your own head a lot, just kind of like having faith in yourself, retelling yourself that this is, a good idea, that this is going to end up
Right.
like worth it. You have to be very comfortable, I think, with your own mind. And I think a lot of introverts are more comfortable kind of being in their own head versus extroverts.
Right. As introverts, like we don't have to be the center of attention and exude all of this energy all of the time. And so with bodybuilding, it's actually better to conserve your energy and to put it into the things that matter, like training and cardio. But then outside of that, just keeping it to yourself and being able, which is not to say that I don't have my moments of like energy or extroversion with my friends and stuff. But yeah, definitely I've noticed that bodybuilding has almost helped me embrace that introverted side of myself too.
So once you got into the sport and you competed and you're like, oh, this is amazing. I love this. This is for me. How long did it take you to be like, to hit that first true big roadblock of like, as much as I love this, I'm maybe questioning it, or I have like a hard moment in my life and I'm like, is this really going to be something that lasts? Like, did you have that?
I would say I did have it pretty immediately, honestly, into my second prep ever. So I did my first prep, and then I was a senior in college. So I was like, I'd like to finish out my time in college just enjoying, and then I'll get back to bodybuilding after. And after college, I had met my boyfriend, and we were going out a bunch, and then we moved in together. And he's very similar to you, where he lives the lifestyle, but he doesn't compete. So he doesn't go through like really big bulks or really uh, stage lean cuts. Not to say that you haven't done that. I'm sure you've gone through bulking and cutting, but with bodybuilding, you know how they get so extreme. He hasn't done that, and he hadn't back then either. And so I remember when I started my second prep ever, all of my friends at the time and my family, and then him, it was like all this one day where they were just like, are you sure you want to do it again? Are you sure? Like you did it once, you already did it. Why do it again? And I just felt extremely unsupported. And I had a moment where I was in the driveway of our house in the car, just crying. And I didn't realize that he had pulled up behind me, and he didn't realize that I was in there crying, but he came to like surprise me. And then he realized like, oh crap, she's really struggling with this. And we sat down and had a conversation. And that one day where I felt super unsupported and just it made me question, like, do I want to do this again? I get like everyone's having such a negative reaction, maybe it's not the best thing for me to do. Well, we sat down, we had a conversation, I told him how much it meant to me, and I just said, listen, like at the end of the day, I don't need much from you. I just need that support. I just need to know that you support me going into this. And that's it. Like, I won't ask you for anything else. And ever since then, like, there has never been a moment that he's doubted it. Even we, like, last year for my pro card run, I kept going and going and going. I did two shows. And then I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to push to nationals in December. And that would put me at like 9 months out of the year being on prep. And even then, he wasn't like, are you sure? You know, that's a long time to prep. He was like, okay, go for it. You got this. Like, this is, you know. So I think there was just that one day early on. But ever since then, I think because I have his support and everybody else, my friends, my family, they saw me do it again and then again and again. I think they kind of just accepted, like, okay, she is going to do this. She is committing herself to this.
When you decided to kind of take that break from bodybuilding and,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote, live your life, because, it's hard to find that balance. It's hard to be like, this is something I really want to succeed in, but it's also like, I'm young, I want to do things. So when you did take that break though, was there a period of time where it was almost hard for you to like be comfortable with doing things that you weren't able to do before because you were in prep or because you were more concerned about your physique?
Yes and no. So back then, because I was so new to the sport, I don't think that I fully realized the implications of what I was doing. And I was also very young still. I mean, I'm still young, but I was even younger then. And I didn't have all of the knowledge I do now. So really, it wasn't that difficult for me. I didn't reverse diet. I had a pretty rough rebound, but at that time, I was just living my life and living my life as a college student. I lived with four other people in this small house. Like we would go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I kind of honestly, I did the bodybuilding and I experienced it and I loved it. But then I just went back to being normal for the rest of that semester, and I loved it. I lived up every moment. It wasn't until maybe like a year later when I realized like, hey, I really don't like the way I look and feel. And I did that bodybuilding thing and I loved it, but then I completely just let it all go. Maybe I should try to find some balance. Like there's got to be a middle of the road there.
Yeah, that balance is so challenging. I find myself
Mhm.
like wanting to wanting to do something extreme, and I'll set this goal and I'll do it. And whenever I'm done with it, it's like it for one, it feels weird not doing it. It's like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
I'm so used to this routine and now I'm not stuck to that anymore. But like what do I do next? How do I move forward kind of thing? That's always been,
Right.
challenging for me to get back into the swing of things. And actually, this most recent holiday season, I fell out of like, I wouldn't say like a true fallout of it, but just a few weeks of weird schedules, how it is around
Mhm.
the holidays and New Year's and things. And that was something that I really focused on. And I think just being like conscious that that is happening. Hey, this is happening, but it's okay. You just do what you can do until we get back to normal. Do what you can do when things are acting a little weird in your life, and it's okay that it's not perfect. I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that I learned in 2022, and it came in the last couple of weeks. But um,
Yeah.
when you got back into bodybuilding, was there was there like a newfound, almost like a newfound appreciation as well as like a newfound concept of what bodybuilding really was?
Yes. I think it took me up until this year to really feel very confident in myself as a competitor and calling myself a bodybuilder, because I think that it's just been continuous learning. So when I got back into bodybuilding and I did another prep, my second ever prep, it was it wasn't as big of a lifestyle change as the very first prep had been, but I do think like every single year and every single prep that I go through, I pull lessons away. So kind of similar to what you were saying with like this past holiday season, just learning that, hey, when things are out of my regular routine and maybe out of my control, the only thing that I can really do here is focus on what I can control and then kind of give yourself grace for the rest of life, which is just messy. I think that it's taken me honestly up until this point, and this year to get there. Back starting that second prep, just to answer your question, I think that's when I learned how to live the lifestyle as a bodybuilder. Was that second prep, that second go around, because my coach had he had kind of come to me and been like, hey, you didn't reverse diet, you had a rough rebound, like we're not starting with the physique that we started with before. You haven't, you're not at the same starting place, so things are going to be different. And the approach that we used was different than the first prep. So I kind of had to learn like, oh, okay, I can't do the same diet and cardio and expect the same results every single time. Like things are going to be different. Your physique is going to evolve. Uh, and I just had to kind of learn that on the fly, because I was fully expecting going from like eating out a few times a week, going to the gym here and there. I was like, okay, prep means, eating XYZ foods and going to the gym 5 times a week. Like that is a must. But with that second prep, I had to learn, hey, those foods that worked for you before, they're not going to work for you this time. Like I had some digestive issues and I was just like, I don't understand. Egg whites worked perfectly fine last time. But it's been a constant evolution of learning and growing and changing. But I would say I very much live the bodybuilder lifestyle now. It took a while for me to get there in the beginning.
And I think what you mentioned about not starting at the same point, I think that's one of the hardest things, whether it's bodybuilding or just someone who wants to get back into shape.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a tough mindset to challenge too, because of just the way that things are marketed to us, like as consumers. Like if you look at our I don't want to get onto like my little soapbox, but if you get into like marketing in our society and the way that people try and prey on you, or the big brands try to get your attention, it's by telling you that there's quick fixes and fad diets and here's how you can lose 30 pounds in 30 days. And they try to sell you these things. And I think that people get stuck in like, oh, well, I tried keto that one time and it worked. I lost the 20 pounds. And now that I've gained it back, let me try it again. And I think it just becomes this cycle of you're attempting to do a diet, or you're attempting to lose weight in some way that didn't stick for you before. It didn't work for you before. So why would you try it again? Which I think the preps taught me, because every single prep has been different. So on that same, like in the same pathway, if you're just a general lifestyle person, or if you're looking to improve your health and you keep doing the same thing over and over again, looking for that quick fix that might have worked when you were 20 or 30, and you're like, well, why doesn't it work now? I don't get it. I just think it's the way that things are marketed to us, and that people don't understand at the root of all that is like, you need to find something sustainable that is going to allow you to live the life that you want to live, but also give you the results that you want. Like there is that way. You have to learn by trial and error.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. Save 20% off your first order with the link below, or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below. I'm sure you have people in your life that you give advice to, whether it's like truly like sit down and give them advice, or it's just like a passing comment of, hey, this, and this. Or that they maybe even ask for advice, and you feel like, hey, I've done a good job. I shared this information. Now they get it. And, just a day later, a week later, a month later, they are doing the, exact opposite. And it's like, it's so ingrained, that idea,
Yeah.
those things are so ingrained because of, just people not knowing, we're not educated well, and the stuff that we do see, like you're saying, it's kind of manipulative. We don't get good information, from anywhere really. It's
Yeah.
amazing how like almost backwards the system is when it comes to like creating a healthy person.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it does, it happens. So I convinced some of my corporate coworkers, like, hey, you should get some blood work done, because the things that you're talking about, the constant fatigue, the chronic headaches, not being able to lose any weight no matter what you do, like those aren't normal things. Like you shouldn't have to drink 3 cups of coffee in a day just to get through the day. And so I got some of my coworkers in my corporate world to do the blood work, and I was actually pretty impressed, because some of them did take the results and they had conversations with their doctors, and they were able to get real answers for themselves. But some of them were just like, oh, well, everything looked like it was, it was fine. I think it's fine. And I was just, it makes me throw my hands up, because I'm like, I really want to help you here. And I can give you resources and tools, and, you can tell people the information, but until they're willing to, I guess, learn it and dig a little deeper for themselves, it's just so hard, because you're not going to get them to change. Like they have to want the change.
That's it. You can't make somebody want it. And I think what people think is like the people who are going to the gym and eating healthier and are more conscious about these things, it's we're passionate about it, of course, but they think that like that's just how we are, that we don't even want to not go to the gym, or we don't even want to, eat that cake or whatever. Like it truly is a decision. It's a daily decision. It's a thing that is challenging for people, even like me and you, who do enjoy this kind of thing. And I think that's what people don't understand. It's like, well, whenever I become like that person, I can do that. When in reality, it's just about the choices that people are willing to make and the sacrifices people are willing to make.
Yeah. And I find that people are a lot happier to just go along what they've been doing and what they're comfortable with, then maybe challenge themselves to change some of those habits or change some of those routines. Yeah.
You mentioned, getting that blood work done, and actually I talked to someone on the podcast here actually last night about telehealth and how impactful that's been in the most, last 2 years, really the recent past, on becoming more accessible to people when it comes to like understanding, your blood work and how you can kind of get in touch with a doctor and have a conversation just like this. And I think technology like that, and even in a different area of technology, different wearables and things that people, they really get, like with the Apple Watches, it's not the most, fitness wearable ever, but it does tell you some things. And I think that gets people a little bit more involved in their health and a little bit more educated on what a normal heart rate like range is. And I think it's so crazy that that's something that needs to be taught to adults, but it's good that it is being, more understood and with sleep, people can now track their sleep with different things. Even, there's a bed. My dad has a bed that will tell you all kinds of things. It has different sensors in it. So it'll tell you, your heart rate variability. It'll tell you, when you're sleeping, different stages of sleep and all these kinds of things. So it is cool to see like where the technology will go and where it can go if we show an interest in those things. And if that's where the money goes, then that's, where the corporations will put their money to invest in and help us. And it's kind of a give and take a little bit.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think it's so cool to see things like fitness trackers moving more into the mainstream. Like I have friends who would never wear like any sort of fitness watch. And now it's like, okay, they've got the Apple Watch, they've got Fitbit. You can even get like a pedometer, just a simple pedometer, so you can track your steps. Amazon, super cheap. They're reliable. Like what matters most is the consistency over time, right? If you're wearing it consistently, it'll give you the data you're looking for. But I think that there is going to be a bigger push in that sort of technology. Like the bed, that's so cool. It can tell you how your heart rate, the variability. It can tell you, like, I'm sure it says like if you're moving around a lot, if you were like in deep sleep, all that sort of stuff. That's so cool. And I think it's super useful.
Yeah. And it's easy, and it's a way for somebody to just get introduced into the world. But in regards to your bodybuilding, at what point was it like right away when you wanted to, or did it take some time to get invested to the point where you're like, I'm going to compete to go pro?
Yeah, it was pretty right away. I think the first time I stepped on stage and then I got off stage, I started following more competitors on Instagram, on YouTube. Courtney King, Angelica Teixeira, like those were the two women that I really followed heavily and followed a lot of their journey. And honestly, I think it's kind of naive of me, but honestly, like immediately I was like, oh, I want to go to the Olympia. Like that was my goal immediately. Stepping off an amateur NPC bodybuilding stage, I was like, oh, I think I can do it. I think I can get to Olympia. So I think for me, it was pretty immediate. I knew, but the more I found that the more you invest into something, the more that you pursue it, the more you realize you don't know. So the more that I got into bodybuilding, the more I realized like, oh, wow, I'm skipping a bunch of steps here. Like I can't just go to the Olympia. It doesn't happen that way, but for most of us. So I had to like take a step back, reevaluate, and then set these smaller goals for myself. But I knew pretty immediately, like I want to do great things in this sport. And I believed that I could.
That's a big part of it. The idea that like I can start training and I can like have the dream and have all, put in the work and potentially get to that level is amazing, because it's so available to people. You can't really have that same availability in like mainstream sports. If I'm 27 or 25 or 22 even, I can't just get into a sport like hockey or baseball or basketball or football and expect to, realistically become a pro and reach,
Right.
the NBA finals. It's not realistic. But in terms of bodybuilding, it gives an opportunity to, I don't want to say at any age, but certainly in a more advanced stage in other sports, to commit to something, to reach a high level in a sport. It's unlike almost, really any other sport.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the opportunity that's there, I think, is something really attractive to a lot of people that are in the sport, because like you said, you can go from amateur to pro to potentially getting on the biggest bodybuilding stage in the world. Like there's really not a lot of barriers there except for yourself, like the choices that you make and the work that you put in and the time, the effort. So I love that about bodybuilding, because it is like you could get to the biggest stage in the sport.
Yeah. So making that pro card run for you, what,
Mhm.
what changed within your life to make that become a reality?
I joined a new team, a new coach, Team Mahaley, and I currently coach for them as well. But I think switching teams, so I was working with like a local coach in my area up until that point, and I just knew that I needed something more detailed and something that was more personalized to me that could get me to that higher level that I was looking for. So I switched coaches. I switched to my current coach, Justin, and just from the get go, like his email response back to me, I just felt the energy that he believed in me, because I told him in my inquiry email, hey, my goal is to go pro and get to the Olympia. Those are my goals. And whatever steps that fall in between there, I'm willing to do. I'm willing to put in the time, but like you should know, these are my big goals. And he was like, let's do it. Like he wasn't like, it might take this time or genetics or this or that. He was like, okay, that's what you want, then let's do it. And so within the rest of my life, I think that pro card run, it really showed me how focused I could be, how dedicated I could be, because honestly, that whole year, it's like a blur. I remember being on prep, and that's kind of it. And prep and competing were my life. Like I had my job, I had my relationship, I had my dog, but it was everything in my life for that pro card was like centered around that.
Right. And having, that kind of focus and having that kind of push, was there ever a time where it was like, I think everybody has like a little voice in the back of their head, that self-doubt. Did that self-doubt ever kick in for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My prep came to a head. And I've told this story, and it's not something that I'm like particularly proud of, but it is something that I think is important for people to know that. So up until a certain point, I had been absolutely 100% perfect on plan. 100%. There was not a meal that went untracked. There was not a cardio session missed. Training, every like set, rep, everything was done with focus and intensity and purpose. But that it got to a point where it was almost too easy. It felt like I was like, I know that I'm doing everything I'm being asked to do, but it's too easy. Like it can't be, not that it was easy, but I was like, I think something's missing. And I had incredible just feelings of self-doubt and, do I deserve to go pro? Do I deserve this? Is the work that I'm doing going to be enough? And at this point, it was November. And so nationals was in December. I'd been on prep since March or April. And my coach had just given me 4 days off completely. So no cardio, no training, just hit the diet, hit my steps, and just rest and recover. And day one, I completely cheated on my diet. I like broke. And it was because those voices of self-doubt, because all day I was like, no cardio, no training, like I'm not going to do anything. How is that possible? And I remember just feeling so low, like so in my own head, so down. I was alone. I think it was a protein bar. It was like sitting in the pantry, and I saw it, and something in me just snapped. And I ended up having like that protein bar, all of these rice cakes, peanut butter. Like I completely went off my diet. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, how am I going to fix this? What have I done? Now I definitely don't deserve this pro card, because pros don't cheat. And I called my coach, I was crying, and he was like, you know what? It's okay. Like we got 4 weeks. This is not something that is prep ending. I need you to know that if you mess up again, you're done. Like, we're out of prep. You're not going to nationals. You can't mess up again. This is it. And, for some reason that like relit the fire within me that, you know what, I know I messed up, but I have been perfect for 7 months prior. So one mess up isn't going to throw all of that out the window, or it shouldn't. And so I just worked. I worked so hard for the last 4 weeks, and going into nationals, I just knew, I was like, despite that mess up, I was like, whether I win my pro card or I don't, I'm going to be so happy, because I know that I gave it my all this prep, and I was human. I made a mistake, but I was proud of the way that I handled it too. I was like, you know what? I didn't try to hide it from my coach. I didn't try to go do extra cardio and just say, you know what, let me just try and do something to mitigate this. I was just honest. I was open, and it worked out. And so I'm not saying, I definitely don't want people to think that the message is like, hey, you can cheat on your diet and still go pro, but like, rather, it's okay if you mess up. Like, we're all human, and that happens, especially when you're so intense on something for so long. You're going to have moments of self-doubt. They're going to happen. But I think what's more important is like how you handle the aftermath of that, or how you handle yourself when the self-doubt does come up the next time, because it will.
Right. Yeah. And do you think you're somebody who works better under that kind of like back against the wall kind of way of thinking in a way?
I do. I think ever since I was young, I prefer to have really high expectations set for myself, whether that's for me or an outside source, because I like to be held to that standard. I do. I like to feel the pressure back against the wall, like, this is it, do it or you're done type of thing. I love that. Yeah.
It's so funny. Like for people who definitely aren't in bodybuilding, who don't really focus too much on their diet, it's probably crazy for them to hear you say like, I cheated on my diet with a protein bar and like rice cakes and peanut butter. Like most people, it's like, oh, I cheated on my diet. I just ate like a gallon of ice cream. It's
Yeah.
such. But the thing is, it's it's the same. Or I'm assuming, because it sounds like it is. It's almost the same. It's the same struggle. There's so many reasons people eat in different ways, of course, but I think one of the biggest is almost like control, because that's thing you can control, and it makes you feel a certain way, and to me it sounds like you were just trying to like find a certain like you're almost trying to find like a feeling that you knew, that you were used to, that you could like grasp to, because the things around you were so different. You weren't training, you weren't worrying about cardio. What can I do to feel like myself again? And it just seems like that's what people do, whether it's in bodybuilding, the kind of the way you did it, or they have a bad day at work and they go home and eat a gallon of ice cream.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think there's like a strong mental component to it. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. Save 20% off your first order with the link below, or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
The way that we utilize food in our culture is crazy, but the way that we just naturally, that our brain is wired with food.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like you said, I think it's just the way that we're programmed around food, like social events. You go out with your friends, you get something to eat, or like holidays, very food centered. So it is interesting to be in a sport where you have to be like so in control of your food. And then there's all these like opportunities throughout your day that I think if you don't compete, you don't almost realize, but like when you do compete, or if you're living that fitness lifestyle, you're like, oh, wow, there are donuts like every day in the break room, or I pass that burger shop every single day on my way to work. It just, yeah, food is everywhere.
It is. And until you, like you said, until you're a person who doesn't just go for whatever is there, you're almost mindlessly doing it. When you turn that into an option, into a choice for yourself, you begin to realize, like you said, oh my gosh, like I have to say no to a lot of like opportunities to eat certain foods that I never even realized were opportunities before. Like just that little piece of candy that's sitting in a bowl. Like, are you going to grab that or are you not going to grab that?
Yeah. And then for me, like when I was on prep and competing, it became like, oh man, I can't grab that candy, but I want to so bad. Whereas like beforehand, it was like I could walk by it 10 times and not even look. So it's just funny how like your perspective can shift.
Right. So speaking about that, like perspective shifting, how is yours now, shifted because you have that pro card and, because based on the goals that you had when when you set out, you want to get to the Olympia. So how has your perspective on that goal changed and what's like, changing around you so you can reach that level?
Yeah, I think that my perspective has evolved at like after I won my pro card, coming off of that because it was such a long prep, I struggled really hard with just food focus and feeling like, okay, I'm a pro now, so I have to be on top of my stuff. I have to reverse diet properly. I have to set an example for other people in the sport of how to conduct yourself with food. And so there's a lot of pressure around that, but because I've spent like an entire year plus away from the stage, away from a calorie deficit, I feel like my relationship with food now is completely different and so much better and healthier. But in terms of like my perspective and things around me changing, so I used to live in Colorado and I worked out at a 24-hour fitness, just a regular commercial gym. And it was great. Like, don't get me wrong. I think those gyms they serve their purpose. But I just recently, this past year, moved to Austin, Texas, and I work out at Factory Gym, which is like they're a bodybuilding centered gym. They have powerlifting and strongman stuff as well. But the environment there, like the vibe and the atmosphere is so different than your typical 24-hour Planet Fitness, Crunch Fitness, like more commercial gyms. Working out at a bodybuilding gym has changed a lot for me in terms of just like training intensity and just that environment. When you're around it, you're driven, you're pushed harder. Like my training has just skyrocketed. I feel like I've made more progression in the last 6 months than like the last 6 years because of that environment. So I think that is kind of key as well, is what you're surrounded by.
Yeah. And energy is it's almost like an overused term in a way, like, oh, this place has energy or the vibe or whatever. It's
The
almost
vibes.
overused in a way, but like until you get that, until you've like actually felt that, and that's something that I felt this year in different gyms, you can't understand it and you can't even explain it to somebody, but it's so powerful.
It is. Yeah. And I think the 24-hour, like it served its purpose, but to elevate, to get to where I want to go, which is the Olympia, I think I had to change my environment. Like I was able to go pro working out of a 24-hour fitness. So it's not something that like should be frowned upon or looked down upon or anything like that at all. But I do think like when you're trying to take it to the next levels, you have to be aware of that energy and that environment and like where you're putting yourself. Because if you're on prep for a pro show or if you're on prep trying to get to the Olympia and you walk into your gym and the energy is low or the vibes aren't there, you're putting additional obstacles like in front of you because who knows if your training session is going to be good or not. It's better to put yourself in a conducive environment.
And it's almost like humidity, it's like that
Yeah.
feeling is sticky and it like sticks with you when you leave, and it makes you want to like continue even after, like it pushes you afterwards too, and it makes you want to stay away from those things or do more of these things. So yeah, it absolutely translates, I think, into it's kind of like the saying of like the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is like, I know every single day going into factory, they see me every day. And it's almost like an extra layer of accountability. Like I think as athletes, like we hold ourselves accountable already, but there is that layer from other people, because you know that they're going to be there and they're going to see, hey, you're not lifting with the same intensity that you were yesterday. What's up? So it does. You have those people around you to kind of push you now, which is nice.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than being called out for like not being there at your normal time either.
Yeah. Like, where were you today? It's like, oh, I swear I went. It was just a different time.
Right. You're thinking about all these things, and it's an elevated version of fitness. It's like some people want to go work out and then they eat like a healthy meal afterwards and they feel good, and they'll still go get the ice cream, or they'll still, maybe skip a workout here and there. And then you elevate that to bodybuilding. And now all of a sudden you're thinking about like how you can do all of these other things within your life, like even better. How can I, sleep better? How can I recover better? So it just takes it to the next level. It raises that commitment and how much time you're spending on it and how much money you're spending on it. So it's, and then to elevate that to the pro level and then trying to get to the Olympia. So it's just another level. You keep kind of raising the bar on what you're willing to both do and not do.
Exactly. Yep. It definitely does. Because every layer, there's going to be something else that you're going to have to say no to, or something else that you're going to have to try. So it's pushed me so beyond like what I ever thought I would be doing. And it's been super cool.
So how has coaching done that? How has coaching others become like a learning lesson for you? And what have you taken away from the experience?
Yeah, coaching has been amazing. I love it. I wasn't sure. So when I first got into like competing, I thought like, I'll just be a competitor, all that stuff. But my first couple coaches that I had experiences with, it's not that they were bad, but they weren't the best either. And I just knew I could be somebody who helps change the industry, or helps with the movement that I've been seeing, especially within the past few years, of making bodybuilding not so unhealthy. Because it is, to a point, like getting stage lean, it's not a healthy endeavor. It's an extreme sport. But I do think that within the more recent years, especially, we're seeing a push towards, hey, how can we optimize your health in the off season? And then how can we keep that health as long as possible throughout the prep? Because there is going to be a point when you have to push. There is going to be a point where it is a little unhealthy. But I think going in and coming out with the perspective of how can we optimize that for the athletes, I've seen a huge rise in that. And I wanted to be a part of that legion of coaches and make that positive change within the industry. And so actually what happened, how I fell into coaching basically was when I was on my pro debut prep, I felt that I guess it's pressure. I felt the pressure to like elevate and continue learning and growing. And I talked to my coach and I said, hey, I love this team. I love what you're doing. I've seen what you do for the other athletes. I've experienced what you do for me, and I want to be a part of it. How can I be a part of Team Mahaley and give back to you guys the way that you guys have poured into me? And he was like, I will be hiring coaches like in the next 6 months, like we'll be adding on. He was like, I need you to show me that this is truly what you want. Like, go for it, go all in, get athletes, get clients, get results, and show me that you have what it takes to be a coach. And we'll talk again in 6 months. And so just honestly, within a week, I had like designed what I wanted to be like my check-in process. I had thought about my why, what I wanted to enforce with my clients, like everything that goes into coaching. I did it within a week, like structured it, and then I just launched. I just went for it. I dived head first, not really knowing what was going to happen. I just put it up on my Instagram. Hey, I'm accepting online clients. The first few that I took on, I didn't make them pay because obviously I was like, I'm learning, alongside with you. I did get my my NASM CPT and nutrition certifications. I'd gotten those back in 2020. So I did have the certifications, but honestly, I think what matters more is just experience and the continued education, because the sport is growing and evolving, and fitness, the science behind fitness, it's always growing. So I think as a coach, like, you must be continuously educating yourself, continuously seeking different approaches, methods, because there are different paths, right? There are a million and one paths to getting lean, but you need to find the one that works best for your athlete that's right in front of you. So I honestly, I just dived right in. I went through John Jewett's like J3U University certification. I'm looking into mentorships right now with some of the coaches in the bodybuilding industry that I really respect. And I'm loving it. And the athletes that have put their trust in me, I just love that so much. I've gotten to impact their lives in so many more ways. Like I had this one woman, she started working with me, and then she ended up getting certifications, completely changing her career and like changing her life direction basically because of what she had learned from our time together in fitness. And it's been the coolest journey.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about with like the research and the new stuff that is known about how to do things in a more optimal way, it's so exciting because, you know, getting to talk to people from all around the community of bodybuilding with different age groups and different experience levels, you know, you hear how they started, you know, 20 years ago and how it's evolved.
Yeah. And it's wild to me because if you even go back, like you said, like 20 years ago, people were prepping women like mini men. And it's really only been within the last like decade that we realized, hey, you can't prep women the same way that you prep men. You just can't. Our hormones and everything are completely different, and everybody needs to be treated as like their own individual. And so like the cookie cutter plans and the personalization, I really think that that's kind of shifting out of the bodybuilding world, which I love, and more like people centered coaching is taking its place. So
Yeah.
it's been really cool.
Especially in a time when more people are exposed to bodybuilding, when there's more divisions, you know, it doesn't have to be, how can I add as much muscle as possible? It's now like, we're doing these specific things. We're adding muscles in these specific areas, or we're, you know, tweaking things in these specific ways due to the, you know, the standards of this class. Like, I think it's powerful, like how it's all coming together kind of at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I think at the end of the day, I think that's what it's about, is the people who are getting into it, that they're not having a horrible experience and that they're not walking away from bodybuilding thinking that it's a terrible sport, it's bad for your health, and they don't understand why people do it. Like I really hope that people who come into bodybuilding with all the divisions, with all of the continuous like information that we're learning about the human body, that it becomes more of a positive experience for more people.
Definitely. And I think it's gaining that traction. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
people are starting to understand how you can do it in a more healthy way.
Yeah, I agree. It's like evolving in front of us. And I love that. I like the direction that it's
Yeah.
going.
That's a good way to put it, is involving in front of us. And it's exciting to be able to see that, because a lot of times evolution is slow. You know, you don't really recognize it until it's like, oh wow, I don't even remember it being the other way. But now it's just moving so fast, and it's so fun to kind of be a part of it. And I'm really excited to see where it heads in the next season in 2023. And, you know, with that being said, what for you in the upcoming year, you know, what's your outlook?
I'm excited. I'm super happy with the decision that they made about taking away the point system. So you win a pro show, you go to Olympia. And I love that, because I think that at the pro level, it should be kind of difficult to get into the Olympia, right? Like winning a pro show is a huge accomplishment. And not that the point system was like taking away from that, but I feel like in terms of health, which is where we're moving, having to go do like 10 shows all year long just to qualify in points for the Olympia, and then show up to the Olympia presumably pretty tired because you've done 10 shows previously. I was never really a fan of that. And I think that there are probably mixed opinions about it, but I'm really, really excited to see who comes out and wins these pro shows and goes to the Olympia. For myself personally, I'm going to start a pro debut prep pretty soon. We haven't like officially started any fat loss phase or anything yet, but we've just been working really hard on some body recomp, kind of cleaning up like within the diet. And we added some cardio back in, which has been kind of nice. Cause when you're like fed up, when you're eating and you're doing cardio, it feels pretty athletic. Like as opposed to being on a diet and doing cardio where you just feel so depleted and tired. So it's been, I've really loved what I've been doing lately, but yeah, as far as like show dates or anything, I don't know. I would love to do maybe like the Dallas Pro or the Texas Pro, compete in Texas. But we'll just see. And I don't have any expectations for myself in terms of like placing because it'll be my rookie pro season. I'm really looking forward to getting up next to other pros and hopefully some Olympians. I hope that I go to some big shows and I can get next to those Olympians so I can see directly like exactly what I need to do to stack up against them. But mostly I'm just excited to get on the pro stage.
Yeah, no, I think big things coming in 2023, with the sport in general. And it sounds like, you have some pretty good aspirations as well. So it's, a very exciting year, I think, for yourself and a lot of people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be super exciting.
Very exciting. I have some goals of my own that I'm really looking forward to, when it comes to the podcast, just continuing to get to talk to people like yourself who are pushing themselves, who are dedicated to something, who are willing to make the sacrifices to reach their goals. It's really cool to get to talk to people like you.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. And having a podcast, getting to speak to all different sorts of people in the fitness industry, I think that's amazing because you get such a taste of all the different perspectives and all the different ways that there are to be fit and to be into fitness. So I think that's super cool.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It's the shared human experience. Like we could all be doing completely different things, but there are going to be those similarities that weave in and out. And especially with fitness being kind of a focal point, it's really interesting to see how different people from different walks of life who have completely different lives engage in fitness and health.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I really appreciate you coming on. It was really great getting to chat with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I loved our conversation and it's been so fun.
And before we head out, if you want to share your social media and your podcast and where people can find that, you can do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram, I'm at Noah McCabe, just my name. And then I have a podcast called Becoming Relentless and we release Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google, all the platforms. So links will be in my bio. But otherwise, if you want to contact me, Elenoa at teammahaley.com is my coaching email. And if you just want to chat, you can reach me on Instagram. I respond to all the DMs, all the questions, everything.